Hello, this is the President. Hello, this is the President of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. They're telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, did you hear that? Give up. Give up. Give up. Give
To call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Hope you had a fine Easter. For those of you celebrating Passover, I'd like to say a special hello to you. And I think that having an Easter Sunday that gets marred by a horrible event is just aggravating and sick at the same time. I know that my producer Ron Patton came in today, and he says it's a sickening feeling where you can't worship how you want or who you want without suffering from some sort of attack. And I said to him, well, it just seems to me that we were heading in this direction from the very beginning, and we've seen many icons and a lot of hints as to what was coming. It's just that when it happens, you go back and say, that's what that meant. Oh, okay, that's what that meant. That happens with anything dealing in prophecy. A lot of the time you're on a roll and you can see the pattern and you know this is where you're going, but you don't know how it's going to end up. And when it does end, it's either surprising or it's something that you expect. But I don't think anybody expects this much damage, or at least these kind of attacks on Christians. It was the day after Palm Sunday when the Cathedral of Notre Dame went up in flames. It was on the anniversary of when Jesus cleared the temple. And I saw the coincidence, but I was more concerned about the damage and the symbolism of how it happened on the first day of Aries, which is considered a fire sign. It was a huge coincidence, at least so we're told, and the media was careful not to pin the blame on any particular group, just an act of God, or, as I was speculating, was it really an act of God? Or if it was an act of God, then it certainly was synchronous. I mean, something didn't feel right. I mean, it's too weird that it happened on a day of a great, of occult significance. Of course, the zodiac, the beginning of Beltane, which is the burning time. I mean, it's just, it was like what happened on the Ides of March. This crazed gunman who called himself a Templar gunned down prayerful Muslims in Christchurch, New Zealand. And then we were on the air like weeks before saying, beware, 15th of March, because something terrible is going to happen. There's a window between the 15th and May 31st that's going to be pretty active. Now, we did not know that the activity would be against Muslims and Christians, only that, everything seems to be piling up to the idea that when we did the show Europa Rising after the shooting at Christchurch, we were saying, doesn't it seem like this is the beginning of the, reboot of what would be seen as a crusade or the Crusades? speculated about that. And, of course, you don't want to think that this is happening. But, just after the Notre Dame fire, the Notre Dame fire, a man walked into St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. He carried gas cans, and he was immediately arrested. He just walked in with gas cans. And then on Easter Sunday, the bigger event happened, a series of explosions in Sri Lanka. Ripped through churches and hotels on Easter, killing, I would say, over 300 people. I mean, it depends on your source. About 500 people were injured. And, of course, the death toll mounts as more and more people succumb to their injuries. I mean, not only was the attack carried out on a holy Christian holiday such as Easter, it was also carried out on a day that's symbolic of the goddess of fertility and war, Ishtar or Inanna. Now, Ishtar is a goddess. Actually, it's Ishtar. Ishtar is a goddess that is depicted in a clay tablet called the Queen of Night that comes from ancient Mesopotamia. And she's depicted in the artwork as a beautiful woman with wings. She wears a horned headdress of a deity and holds the sacred rod and ring symbol in her raised hands. And not only is this woman winged, but her legs taper into bird talons, which I thought was interesting. Some say the image is also linked to Lilith, the Mesopotamian queen of the dead, who rules the underworld. It's been said that this beam has found itself in everything from internet sites to movies, and some even say that she's bringing a curse into the world, as ISIS may be the culprits in these latest attacks, or at least some sort of sect that follows these occult dates. Christian dates, or whether or not they're Christian dates, zodiac dates. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, Christian churches, along with Jewish synagogues and Buddhist shrines and Shiite Muslim mosques, have been prime targets for for a lot of violent jihadists, whether from so-called ISIS, Al Qaeda, or groups or individuals that most of the world has never heard of. And this is what's terrifying: is that there are two things that are scary. One is some Islamist sect that you don't know who they are, you don't know what they think, you don't know what they believe, and the other is the idea that we're being bombarded by demons or some other power that we have no control of, or that we have no idea how it's been conjured and brought into the world. I mean, when you look at the terrorists, okay, what many people don't understand is that many of the terrorists, both Islam, Christian, Jewish, whoever they may be, they are on the fringe of their faith. They are extremists. And they believe that anyone who does not believe exactly as they do deserves to die in their, quote, holy war. And, of course, there's the holy war that Muslims have devised against crusaders and Jews and infidels and apostates. So they do it so widely. I mean, they cast their net of hatred, and they justify killing almost anyone. And the softer the target, in many respects, the better the target. The easier the target is the softer target. And the easier the target is the fishbowl target, the target where people are all gathered in one place and they have no way to escape. And now, what do you think? You have to put guards at a church? I mean, we have churches being set fire to here in the United States, black churches in Louisiana and other places they're being set fire to. Churches are being set on fire all over the world right now. Christian churches. The attacks are against Christians. And, people are saying that what happened in Sri Lanka was a response to what happened in Christchurch. And maybe what happened in Notre Dame was a response to Christchurch. Maybe, it just stands to reason, as we said, light a match, spark a war. And many matches have been lit, and many churches have been burned down, and we've had threats to synagogues, we've had, beheadings of statues, we've had, just go down the list of all these horrible things that are happening. Now, what is going on here? Now, you could say, well, it's Christians against Jews, it's Jews against Muslims, it's Muslims against Christians. But then we had the story of, we brought up a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, that there was a scorched earth policy against religion. There's a scorched earth policy against religion, meaning burn them all down, forget them all, destroy them all, and introduce them to a new form of religion, and that is Luciferianism. which is not new. However, it's a go-to after we can destroy and exploit all religion, from Islam to Judaism to Christianity. Remove them all and replace them with something else. Because think of all the attacks and what days they fell on. The Ides of March, the Day of Aries, the burning sign, the fire sign, and then Easter, Ishtar, the Queen of Night. The day that's a holy day, representation of Jesus, representative of the resurrection, moving to Passover, which is a holiday for Judaism, or it's a way to look back and to hear the stories at Seder during Passover. And when you look at the perspective and the hatred from ISIS, the Islamic State, those it inspires, places of worship have the advantage of the great symbolism and virtually no defenses for that symbolism, none at all. And an attack in one part of the world can lead to attacks all over the world. And if the death toll is high enough, which is certainly the case with the coordinated bombings in Sri Lanka, the shock will reverberate around the globe for a long period of time. It is that powerful, and they know so. ISIS, Astarte, Ashtoreth, Ishtar, Artemis, Diana, they all have their dark nature. And the metaphor of such characters in mythology and in the contemporary zeitgeist somehow appears to be no accident. And we tried on the show to tell you that there seems to be this continuance of these goddesses or these forms of goddesses, Baba Yaga, La Llorona, Ube Yokai, Momo. I mean, just go down the list. It's the symbol of that clownish face, that face that tries to be human. It's that face of a ghoul. It's that taloned feet, the taloned feet of Baba Yaga, the taloned feet of the Queen of Night, Ishtar, Easter. And the metaphor of all these characters in mythology, how the zeitgeist seems to be having them. I remember back during the Bush administration, there was a word that was used to describe the war on terror. It was a word that sent chills through the zeitgeist, and that was the crusade. Remember? And Bush got all kinds of hell for calling it a crusade. It was a signal to all that a movement of dominionism was about to become the militant arm that would go in and surgically remove evildoers. And to some, the evildoers were a nebulous foe in an open-ended war, and others knew that the term meant Muslims. And the Muslims knew the term was for the infidel. The term was for the crusaders. And though the policy at the time was to deny that there was no war on Islam, but it was untrue. And now the times have reversed themselves, and it appears that the left wing of the political spectrum wishes to not declare that there was a war on Christianity. I mean, the truth is that it appears the Crusades have returned, or at least they have resurrected in the times of ritual during the so-called burning times, the times of Beltane, the times of Ishtar, the times of Easter, Aries, the fire sign. It just seems too coincidental, doesn't it? Too synchronous, too occult. Am I right? What do you think? 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. A few observations that I wanted to share with you tonight on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
Listening to Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. You know, a lot of what I'm talking about, and a lot of what I have been talking about, and I know many people who don't understand why I talk what I talk about, is because most of what has been leading up to this has been talked about in internet subculture sites. Okay, there is an internet subculture, right? And that internet subculture has no regard for religion, has no regard for any of this, but they do know a lot about occult topics. They know a lot about what terrorists think, what they operate on, how they'll move, what they do. They know the imagery. They know the imagery to espouse. They know the imagery to empower. And I've talked about this before. When I was at the Ghost Conference, I talked about Pepe the Frog. I talked about the NPC. I talked about Momo. I talked about all these characters that were mean, magical characters that were there to empower the idea of darkness. To empower fringe thinking. And those of you that are not on the internet probably don't understand this, but memes do trigger attitudes and ideas. And with all of the criticism and all of but this is a hoax, Clyde. Why do you continue to beat this horse? Well, I beat this horse because here where we are now, on the day of Ishtar, the day of Easter, with a huge attack, a burning, bombing attack of churches. We had the burnings. We had the burning times, the Aries, the sign of fire. And on that day, first day of Aries, we had the cathedral at Notre Dame burned down. And we had, before then, on the Ides of March, the rise of Mars, again, the sign of war, symbol of war. We had the mosque, we had the shootings, we had the guy who called himself a rebooted Templar. And even when Notre Dame burned, there was an area of Al-Aqsa Mosque. It was the area of the stables where they say the Templars made their plans and kept their horses. And all of this, you may not understand, but the subcultures on the internet are understanding it. And for some reason, they are resurrecting these ideas. And like I said, it's the fringe. There's the fringe of the faith, okay? The terrorists are the fringe of the faith. The so-called Templars who are attacking mosques are the fringe of the faith. And they believe that if you don't believe as they do, they deserve to die. Someone deserves to die. It's a holy war. It's a holy war between crusaders and those who call themselves the freedom fighters of the greater Islam. They fight Jews and infidels. They say that they're fighting the apostates. But you look at how, they were talking about the radicalization of Islamic terrorists on the internet. It's not necessarily a quick job to radicalize someone, okay? There's no defenses from symbolism. There's no defenses from meme magic, okay? And an attack anywhere in the real world is being actually fomented is building like a snowball. When it's rolling down a hill, it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds until we have a coordinated effect to do things like the bombing of Sri Lanka. And then we have the shock that goes around the globe and people are all haunted and scared. I mean, the truth is, it appears that the subculture, more or less the internet subculture, has adopted sort of like this crusade or this, sort of the crusade ideal. And so we've resurrected those times, these medieval ideas, much like, right now we're in the Beltane season, burning times. They call it the burning times, where Ishtar or Easter becomes the goddess of worship. I mean, the perception of what we call evil has changed, and people are cocksure of what evil is and not realizing that the evil can be found well within their hearts, well within the internet, subcultures. I mean, burning inside everybody is the secret fear that they are or will be the target of an organized crusade to sift them out of existence. And the authorities believe that the biggest threat to their game is the unraveling of their plans by those who are awake. And they call it cynicism, they call it conspiracy theory, and they see it as a threat to their business as usual in the apocalypse. I think we need to pay attention to this subculture. It's hard to point it out to people who are not ensconced in it, but, it's part of my job to analyze what I'm seeing on the internet, from Q to 4chan to 8chan to 4plebs. I mean, just go down the list of all these, subreddit groups, and that young people are picking up on it, and they don't filter it. So we're raising, I guess unintentionally, these crusaders, from the rebooted Templars to the rebooted ISIS to the sects and groups that are responsible.
Hey guys, it's Clyde, and I'm excited to tell you about Youngevity, a supplement company that I've been associated with since 2016. After 1 year, I lost 140 pounds and felt so much more energetic. Since 1997, Youngevity has had one objective: to enhance the lives of people through lively health and wealth. Dr. Joel Wallach and Youngevity have pioneered the mineral supplement market, spreading the 90 for life message throughout the world. Over the years, continued development and innovation has established Youngevity as one of the most successful companies in the health supplement market. If you'd like to feel healthier, look better, you can go to our special website, www.groundzeroforlife.com. That's www.groundzeroforlife.com, or talk to one of our health specialists by calling 877-877-4202. That's 877-877-4202.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
You're listening to Ground Zero. The number's to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. There's an extensive propaganda effort being conducted by the mainstream media, social media. It's being thrown in there by certain minions of government, darker minions and political parties. It's bring about the acceptance of this prefabricated consensus of the occult, or basically many crusaders are out to protect their evil ideologies as fueled with prejudice lies. They're willing to become vicious, in some cases, violent, in order to silence anyone who notices that the new paradigm is to burn down the structure of the world and replace it with a globalism that protects the powerful and destroys the weak. This is a scorched earth policy. While terrorism is the word used as a cudgel to keep people fearful, the real terror is provided by karmic blowback, which will be harsh, self-fulfilling prophecy, leaving people wondering where sanity has gone in this world. As I said today, when Ron Patton came in and we discussed the bombing in Sri Lanka, he said to me, I feel sick. I feel sick to my stomach. And as we discussed further, I started feeling sick to my stomach. I started feeling an overwhelming feeling of dread, wondering, where sanity has gone. Those who speak truth to power will be marginalized in this future that we see. And in some ways, they'll be silenced. And by that time, it may be too late unless there are awakened crusaders against evil that seem to be growing unfettered and unchecked. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says, for the Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. In the book of Hebrews, it states that God is a consuming fire. And in Thessalonians, it says that those who are evil will burn in the light of fire produced by the second coming of the Savior of the world. And this is some hellfire and brimstone preaching, but the Savior in all instances returns secretly to earth from the air. He declares that he is here to save his people and commands that fire devour those who wish to thwart his kingdom or his ideology. Now, this sounds frightening, and it should be frightening to you. It could very well be part of some manipulation process used to create a trigger that ignites a meme. And that meme, once again, light a match, start a fire, start a war. Light a match, start a war. Remember back when we talked about Europa Rising after the shooting of the mosque, the massacre of those prayerful Muslims in their mosque in Christchurch. The majority of the populace is wired to react to this. I mean, they react either badly or they reacted in such a way that's cynical. But see, as I've said many times, we react to symbols and archetypes. And propagandists use this tool for subtle mind control. And they go into what is known as the subculture of the internet. And they push these memes. And I said, before, meme magic is everywhere. And, I was laughed at, told, hey, Clyde, back off of this. I'm not going to back off of anything when I know where it's going. And you can listen to the mainstream media if you want. If you do listen to the mainstream media over me, then more power to you. Because I've been nothing but honest. And I've been giving perceptions of what I see as the subculture pushing issues and images. And that is why things like the Baba Yaga, stories of the hag and stories of the pigs, all of this seems to be coming together. It comes together because of what happen on Ishtar, the goddess with the taloned feet, just like the mother bird, and Uma Yokai and Baba Yaga, all seem to be fitting together in this strange cryptocracy. What we're seeing with the slaughter of Christians and Muslims is a way to encourage a scorched earth policy, and that has always been the goal of the cryptocracy. The word cryptocracy comes from the ancient Greek kryptos, meaning hidden, and krafton, meaning to rule. So it's a hidden rule, type of government, or a type of, it's an organization where the real leaders of the organization are hidden, or they're unknown. A puppet government or figurehead, whether aware or not of the status, is such, but usually it figures into this type of government in concept. It can also be used when referring to similar arrangements in organizations, orders, secret societies, sects, cults. Government, by definition, or by any small group where a governing body is over this group, and if they have secret minions that do work beyond that of the government that is the face or the head. It goes back to deep state. It goes back to, darker government. It goes back to the idea of a dark command that has been ruled by some demon or force. It's a synarch, right? It's a cryptoc synarch. And the proof is written right onto the dates and times of all global terror events. I had so many people writing me saying, Clyde, you need to do something on the 19th, being the time that the Titanic sank, or the time that Lincoln was assassinated, or April 20th. We talked about these times. Now, and this is how the cryptocracy operates. And they use their various cult militias, whether Muslim extremists or so-called rebooted crusaders, to carry out their missions of blood sacrifice. They use Gladio groups. Gladio are the left-behind groups from World War II that NATO had produced to go in and wreak havoc and continue the pogroms. That is how a cryptocracy operates. And they use their various cult militias. They use their various other groups, their terrorist organizations. They paid highly. The idea of cryptocracy, or a synarch, uses smoke and mirrors to gain control of the world. And it's been spoken of by more eloquent writers than myself. It's been spoken of by more eloquent speakers than myself. But I'm still speaking up. I'm speaking up and I'm speaking about it. But it seems that the idea is becoming more believable as we tune into the endless reports of what horrible things are happening on a day-to-day basis in this world. And every group and alleged secret society is focusing on its very own version of the end times. And in essence, they're grouping themselves together to push the proverbial snowball down the mountain so that it will grow. And its momentum swallowing up every last bit of sanity on this planet. And the result is the destruction of all religion, to be replaced with Luciferianism, and all sovereignty to be replaced by a tyrannical globalist plantation. Scorched earth policy. Meaning that the leaders want to just blow everything up, destroy everything, and regrow it, or reboot it, and that's how it is with religion. It's like we need to find a way to destroy all religions so that we can replace it with Hermetic Arcanum. As above, so below. No external savior. Man is God, God is man. Luciferianism and the sovereignty that we all have cherished for many years, nearly 300 years, will be taken away, and we would be replaced, or would have it replaced by some tyrannical globalist plantation. You know what the internet calls it? Since we're talking about subculture on the internet, you know what the internet calls it? The internet calls it a clown world. They call it the clown world. You know how many times I talk about floppy shoes and the ass clowns, the ass hats of the world? It's because there's a subculture on the internet that calls what we're in right now a clown world, meaning that most of what we experience is not making any sense. It's a world run by the old cosmic tricksters. It's a world run by clowns. And everything is either fake, or there's a cluster of those that want YouTube hits, and so they call everything a false flag without knowing the true definition of what one is. And this is the false flag world. And the false flag world is also, we include in the false flag world meme magic and childish conjurers. It's all about childish conjurers. You know, James Hogan, it was a famous science fiction author. He once said this. He said, "Children and conjurers, they terrify me. Scientists are no problem. Against them, I feel quite confident." It's difficult to admit But as an analyst of conspiracy theory, there are theorists out there that love to get attention by acting like children and conjurers. They become self-absorbed in their own agendas, and they forget that most things are manipulated by the cosmic trickster. There is a cosmic element to this, a cosmic dark figure. The trickster, the devil, the demon, the divine feminine demon, the patriarchal demon, the dark father, Saturn, Kronos. I mean, just go down the list of all these different magical icons, and then you see that most things are created by conjurers of meme magic, and then they're capable of getting their memes to leap from the image of the manifestation. Actually, they go from the image to the manifestation, and then the result is a darker form of chaos magic where images and memes lead you down the primrose path to doom. And that is why I said meme magic. Let me spell it. M-E-M-E. I remember M-E-M-E. M-E-M-E. Meme magic. Because I remember when I was at the Ghost Conference, some girl came up to me and says, I didn't know what you meant by mean magic. I know it's meme magic. Corrupting the subculture on the internet. You know, here's something that, you know, if you want to know, what's really interesting is that after the bombings and the killings in Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan government shut down all social media. And so many people say, well, why would they do that? Well, it's obvious why they would do that. Because the social media was probably responsible for the subculture that went out and did what it was doing. They were able to communicate with one another. They were able to communicate to bomb the churches and hotels in Sri Lanka. They were able to kill 300 some odd people, 500 injured. And so what did the government do? Let's shut it down. Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, all among the platforms that were blocked by the government. And so, and they're saying we don't want any more misinformation from these subgroups, the ones that linger on Facebook, the ones that linger in WhatsApp. I'm sure there are many other platforms that were shut down, but media blackouts are what are going to be the norm now. Because we're crossing into another realm. And even though Sri Lanka has had heavy-handed media controls in the past, and we've seen the journalists have routinely faced violence and intimidation over their work, we see what we've done to Julian Assange, we see what we do all over the world, and it's sending the signal. It does not matter anymore. Those who tell the truth, those who manipulate the subculture, those who are there, are going to pay the price. Information is a virus. Good or bad, it's a virus. And those in control don't want anything to get in the way of their scorched earth policies. They don't want anything to get in the way with the fact that they are manipulating and putting into play force multiplied sigils, force multiplied meme magic within the social media, within the subcultures. It's evident. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. If you follow the subculture on the internet and you see all of these topics that seem to follow a pattern, and you know that what sprouts from the internet is action. Thoughts, actions, what I call meme magic, the force multiplication, or at least the false multipliers of sigils being activated. This all began back with a little hoax called Momo. And I say that hoax with quotes because that's how it started. It started with the figure of the clownish face ghoul with the feet of a bird. Okay? And you look at Ishtar, she also, if you look at the Queen of Night, it's a slab that was from Mesopotamia that represented Ishtar, or Lilith. She too was a beauty, raving beauty, with the feet of an owl, or the feet of a rooster, or an eagle. It's the same pattern. And it looks like, a group like ISIS, once again, Ishtar, is forming again. And we have this war within the subculture between this rebooted Templar groups and these new radicalized Islamic groups attacking one another. It's similar to the medieval crusades in a way. Let's go to Nathan in Ohio. Hi, Nathan. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. My point really is that I saw in several articles that I saw over the course since Notre Dame burnt down that people saw Christ in the church after, like in the flames and afterwards.
Yeah, they saw the devil either way. They either, some people said they saw Satan. Other people said they saw Christ in the flames forming some pareidolia of meaning. And I saw it too. I thought it was really remarkable. No one knows for sure, but things do.
No. I just think supernatural events are on the rise anyway.
Sure, they are. Yes, I agree.
And I think this is just. I think the more chaos we have on Earth, the more it feeds the system and keeps the demons coming back for more. In a way, I think a lot of people underestimate what's around them all the time, and they don't even know it.
Well, when you talk about the fire in Notre Dame, you talk about the image of Christ. Once again, I go back to that Deuteronomy scripture that says, "For the Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God." And then it says, God is a consuming fire, and then those who are evil burn in the light of the fire produced by the second coming of the Savior of the world. It's about a scorched earth policy. It's about removing that which someone sees as evil and rebooting it again or refurbishing it again with a paradisical view, or the idea of changing what is chaotic and making it, order out of chaos. Ordo ab chao. Many of you know what that means. So, we're seeing it all happen. It's the signs of the times. It's business as usual in the apocalypse. I'm sure many of you have opinions on what's going on. Tonight, we're also going to be tapping into some more esoterics with Tracy Twyman coming up on the program. And we'll talk more about the subculture of the internet, what we're seeing, and how this has brought about a lot of the images that I've talked about in the past month or so, and how this has all come together on the day of Ishtar, Easter. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. So as I was coming in today, and I met up with Ron in the office, and we discussed what happened in Sri Lanka, our hearts sank and we felt terrible because we realized that a lot of the subculture memes we talked about from the internet, what we call the meme magic, and the force multiplication of sigils. And we talked about this at the Ghost Conference, and many people, I think it was too esoteric for people to grasp in a lot of respects, because you talked about all of the things from the NPC sigil to the Pepe the Frog sigil to Momo to all the other memes that show up that actually move people in certain directions, and the subculture and what it represents on the internet. And the reason why I'm focusing on the subculture is because as I was doing my research today, and this is the truth, okay, I was looking through the internet for Ishtar or Easter, which of course Easter and Ishtar, it's a celebration of fertility. Ishtar was the goddess of fertility. She was the goddess of war. She was the goddess, many different faces of this goddess. And I saw a Mesopotamian image of Ishtar or Lilith or whoever she was. And I noticed that she had talons of a bird as her feet. She had wings as well. And I thought to myself, wow. We were talking about the Baba Yaga. We were talking about the same type of feet and legs on the witch or on the divine feminine or the feminine demon. Of course, Momo it was the mother bird, according to this sculptor of this creature, and how it appeared on the internet. And we said it was meme magic of sorts, bringing about, the idea of death and the idea of death of children. All of these things building up and the images building up. And recently, over the weekend, Janine and I saw the movie, La Llorona, which, of course, again, is the idea of a white woman or a woman with hair, kind of a corpse-painted face, white, with Momo as a clownish-looking face, kind of, a clownish smile, trying to look human. La Llorona shedding tears, trying to look human. It was a terrifying movie. I mean, a lot of jump scares. And, and hearing about this bombing and the churches and the people dying, I wanted to come in and I wanted to do something to try and come to any conclusions here. And I did a search on the internet for burning churches in Ishtar, Ishtar, I-S-H-T-A-R, pronounced Easter, or like Easter, okay? And I refined my searches to Ishtar, Baba Yaga, Momo, Lamashtu, Lilith, La Llorona. And what happens is there's a site called Four Plebs that actually took dictation, or they reported in real time by typing out a transcript of a seance that we did on the air back in 2014. Tracy Twyman and I did a seance on the air in 2014. And I looked at some of the words and the phrases that were coming out as Tracy was trying to channel through this Ouija board that she had created, Baphomet. And I was particularly interested in the parts about the hag, where we wondered if Baphomet or whoever it was on the board was calling Tracy a hag. But, of course, other names were mentioned, like Ishtar. And there were also the golden apple was mentioned, the destruction of Al-Aqsa, the fall of the churches, the black sun was mentioned. Now, we just had the black hole announcement just a few weeks ago. Also, the Royal Order of Jesters. And I thought of the clown world, that, of course, is what they're calling, the subculture is calling the internet now, or calling the world itself, the clown world, the Royal Order of Jesters, the trickster, okay? The pact made with the Abrahamic religions. And I remembered the Pope having the tour with the imams and signing these deeds, say they weren't having a religious war. But yet the religious war is getting worse. And, of course, the connections to Beltane, the burning of the churches, the burning of the stables in Al-Aqsa, the stables of the Templars, and then, of course, all the churches. And I was trying to formulate a pattern. I says, I can't do this. I got to get Tracy Twyman on the phone and find out if she can come on the show to show that, back in 2014, that seance meant something. It just happened, 5 years later, or at least a lot of what was talked about. I mean, there's no statute of limitations on what could be considered prophecy, in my opinion. And so having Tracy Twyman on the show, I'm sure will give us, more of an idea of what happened. Tracy, of course, has been a producer on this program. She's well known for a lot of the books she's written, her Plus Ultra group. I mean, just go down the list of all the things that enlighten us. Tracy Twyman is behind it. And so we're proud to have her on the program tonight. Tracy, welcome to Ground Zero.
Thank you very much for having me on, Clyde. It's going to be an amazing group of synchronicities that we're putting together here tonight, I think. So this is an exciting show. So
did it surprise you at all that a 2014 seance that we did on the radio back when you were producing this show, did it surprise you at all that all of the names came up in this transcription that I read on this Four Plebs site, and how it seems that many of the things, from the golden apple of Revelation to the burnings and the Al-Aqsa Mosque being destroyed, or at least something being destroyed, I mean, I could go down the list of everything that seems to be transpiring now. What was your first impression of this?
Yeah, I noticed a theme building over the last week with some of the current events and Easter, and then having to do with things burning, particularly churches burning, right?
Right.
And so I've been trying to figure that stuff out for a while. Like, I always assume these things mean something. When you see symbols connecting here with current events. I always assume that there's a meaning to it, so I've been trying to figure it out. And then, you emailed me about this seance, which, of course, I hadn't forgotten about, but I hadn't really thought about in a long time. And I remember at the time, ISIS, they were not necessarily just getting started, but they've been doing it for like a year, I think. Yeah. And, it's really becoming a international crisis, And so we knew when we were talking to Baphomet on Halloween, we knew that he was telling us about that there's a portal to hell in Iraq, and that these he seemed to be indicating that Freemasonic groups, the specific ones in particular, you talked about he mentioned the Royal Order of Jesters had something to do with this, and we thought definitely he was talking about ISIS, and also at that time there was a theory going around about that there was a Stargate at the Gulf of Aden, and that people were thinking, well, maybe there's a war blowing up in this area that they can just sort of cover what's going on at the Gulf of Aden. Anyways, so at the time, we thought that the seance sort of made sense, but then there were things that just really didn't make sense, like Royal Order of Jesters, and then he also mentioned jokers. And but when you showed me the bits of transcript that were on that one website, and I started thinking about all this started to fall together here, where this symbolism of the Royal Order of Jesters, which is a group that only Shriners can be members of. You have to be a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Freemason to be a Shriner, and then if you're a Shriner, then you can join this Royal Order of Jesters too. So I knew some stuff about this group. I've seen an extensive documentary about them, mainly about sex scandals that they've been involved in, where they've been caught using their organization's proceeds to fund prostitute parties and stuff like that. So we knew that kind of stuff was going on with them, but I didn't really get what that would have to do with Iraq or anything like that. But now it looks quite different because of, I've already been hearing about how this clown world meme, which has been around for 6 or 7 months maybe, but not really gaining momentum as much. It only started gaining momentum a couple of weeks ago, and what's really weird is, as it started gaining momentum, that's when some of these Easter events happened, and in particular, there's a video that someone put out. It only has, I think, at this point, less than 20,000 views. But it was just a picture of this clown world character. He's called Honkler, okay? And it's Pepe, but he has rainbow-colored hair and a clown nose. And when he comes on, they play circus music, on a video that's about the concept of clown world. They'll play circus music, and they'll do a honk-honk, the bicycle horn. And so anyway, which is, interesting when you think about not only, are all the jesters, their symbol is a clown. In particular, they have one mascot called the Billiken, and he is a personification of the Greek god of mirth called Momus. And he really does have a face that kind of looks like Momo, which is interesting. But so the Shriners, what are they known for? What do you think about when you think about Shriners? The hospitals, and then what else?
The funny hats.
And they dress up like clowns, and they drive little tiny cars at their festivals and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seen that?
Mm-hmm. I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it makes really a lot of sense that it's the Shriners that would spawn the Royal Order of Jesters. And then, because they already had clowns as part of their whole shtick. And then if you connect what Baphomet was telling us on the Ouija board to present events, and this clown world stuff, it really starts to fall into place. The video I was trying to tell you about that has less than 20,000 views right now shows Honkler the Clown in front of a burning church. And the thing is, this particular video came out on April 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So less than a week later, that's when Notre Dame burned up. And then a few days after that, you have this stuff in Sri Lanka.
Right.
And as soon as the Notre Dame fire happened, people who were the commenters on this video said, wow, how'd you do that? And people think that it's either a prophecy or actually meme magic, and probably, an accidental one, because the person who put this video up, wouldn't want a church fire to happen.
Yeah, I saw the video and I didn't understand. I mean, it was Pepe that had a horn, that had a red nose, the rainbow wig, and then there's this circus music, kind of like this really dark circus music, and a church burning. And I looked at it and I'm saying, wait a minute, this is the subculture of the internet out of control. This is something that, and I did a whole lecture at the Ghost Conference about meme magic, and I think people were a little bit put off by it because they didn't get it. They didn't get that something could be released on the internet that can manifest itself in reality. And I even pointed out that even Slender Man that happened to, with those girls who lured the other girl into the playground. And then, of course, Momo, which started things up. And you bring up Momus, which, of course, is the clown god. It's the personification of mockery, the personification of the trickster, and, of course, the mouth and the face, once again, look like a painted-on clown face. It's just the idea, that something is going on. Something on the internet is going on where the mockery of God, the mockery of all is happening. The clown world, they call it. And Momus, of course, is the clown god. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Tracy Twyman, my guest tonight on Ground Zero. We'll be back with more. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. Tracy Twyman is my guest tonight, and we were just talking about the subculture on the internet declaring that we live in a clown world, and we discussed the relationship to Momus, who is I guess you could call the clown god, or you look at him as the trickster. It's also interesting to note, Tracy, that I remember, if memory serves, that he was known as the Son of Night, and I was reading today that the Queen of Night actually is this slab from Mesopotamia that depicts Lilith, or they say it's Ishtar. And of course, much like Momo, she has the taloned feet and the wings. She has the wings and taloned feet. And of course, Momo was the mother bird with the sort of the clownish looking face with the bulging eyes. Is there any relationship, do you think?
Well, yeah, the image that you're talking about, I think it's Lilith, because she has the owl behind her. That was the companion of Lilith. I think that Lilith and Ishtar. Lilith is basically like the dark version of Ishtar. So there's definitely a relationship, even though there's different stories about each, but it's the same thing where in the ancient world, these goddesses, a lot of times they'll have dual or even triplicate versions of themselves. I think, that Nyx, the Greek goddess of night, who's the mother of Momus, I would say that she's probably, equivalent. I tend to have a secretist view to mythology, so I would equate Nyx and Lilith without any sort of problem. I totally think there's a connection, and then I just think it's quite odd that Momus and Momo, it's a very similar word, and then someone on your Facebook chat was questioning whether Momo is really a clown face, but specifically it's a Billiken style clown face that as we were saying, the Royal Order of Jesters uses the Billiken as their mascot, and they use him as a personification of Momus. So if you look up what a Billiken is, Billiken, you look at the face on that Billiken, it looks very much like Momo. And specifically, or I guess even more so, if you look at the version of the Billiken that's used by St. Louis University as their football mascot, he's totally like Momo. So, look, I don't know if any of this stuff is intentional or if it's really just the magic of coincidence, and there is magic in coincidence, and coincidence is a sign and signal of magic happening. So,
right.
You know, I don't think I don't have any problem connecting those things.
It's not really. It's a very interesting, I guess, coincidence, quote unquote coincidence, provided by none other than the trickster, which is a representation of Momus, and maybe the subculture is correct. We live in a clown world, and with meme magic that is force multiplied. We talked about it in the beginning when Momo first arrived on the scene in February and what it all meant during the times, but we eventually moved on to other characters that represented the same thing. We'll talk about that coming up with Tracy Twyman. Don't go away.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. So tonight we are putting together what the subculture on the internet has already put together for us. And we have talked about characters leading up to the fires at Notre Dame, the shootings at the mosque in Christchurch, and moving on to the fires and the bombings that took place in Sri Lanka. I just got an interesting email from John Reeder, who is from the Spirit Walk Ministry. He says this. He says, Clyde, I personally believe from my own experience that the chaos being manifested through the electronic media is not as simple as the work of radical factions, dark government conspiracies, or even Illuminati-like cabals. It is much more ominous. For meme magic, substitute chaos magic, and if you want to include the influence of sigils, take it beyond the sigils, calling in the demons, but signaling the demons answering. Consider the possibility that this is more of a matter of poltergeist-like intrusions through energy portals created by electronic mediums. I think it's more than a possibility, but a probability but please consider that the portal to hell Tracy talks about is a portal for the phantoms in the machine. And that's John Reeder from Spirit Walk Ministry. That's an interesting comment, don't you think, Tracy?
Yes. Okay. So you'll recall that the seance we did, one of the things that Baphomet kept repeating was chaos. And he'd sometimes spell it K-A-O-S, which is often the way that it's spelled by chaos magicians. Now, here's the thing that connects all of this stuff, and what that guy just said. Okay, so ritual fires are very much a part of the Easter traditions of Europe, and anthropologists have often thought that those connect to, older pagan rituals that were very similar. And so one of the things that goes along with that too, I was just reading James Fraser today, who's one of the classic 20th century anthropologists talking about this subject. He mentions that trolls are especially active, during the Easter season, and that they are associated with what he was calling the Paschal Hill fires. So he was saying that everybody would, in these different European cities, like, back in the day, a couple hundred years ago, they would have these fires on top of hilltops. They were part of the Easter festival, and they would call the hill a Paschal mountain. And they also burned something called the Easter Man that they considered a personification of Judas. But anyway, so they were concerned about the trolls And one of the things that they would always do is watch the fires very carefully to make sure they don't get out of control because they're concerned about trolls. Well, in modern language, trolls are tricksters on the internet that go around trying to spread chaos and trying to pit people against one another by saying inflammatory things that get fights started.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's called flaming, by the way. Tracy, it's called flaming, just to let you know. It's called flaming.
Yes, and this meme that really everything seems to be coming back to, which is Pepe, or he's a personification of Kek, the chaos god in the Egyptian pantheon. He's presented by the subculture that the 4chan subculture that believes that Kek or Pepe meme magic is what brought Donald Trump into power against all odds. Mm-hmm. They consider Pepe to sort of be a trickster god. And now if you add the clown stuff to it, then that's totally what he is. But, the Clown World guy, he's not really the one going around starting the fires. The Clown World idea is that this stuff is happening, and it's a nihilistic worldview of just the idea is basically that Europe and maybe even the world at large is too far gone. Everything's collapsing too quickly in terms of the structure of society.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, you might as well laugh about it because it's too late to save anything.
What's fascinating is that you were talking about trolls. They were saying that the Sri Lanka bombings and the fires in Sri Lanka of the churches were in retaliation for what happened in Christchurch. And I once said on the air, I said, isn't it interesting? Muslims die in Christchurch, which seems to be a mockery of the whole affair, saying, well, mosques died in Christchurch rather than, Muslims dying in a mosque rather than saying, well, Muslims dying in Christchurch. What's interesting about that whole situation is Brenton Tarrant, the man who shot all those people, he was actually in his manifesto trolling from the internet subculture. And he was trying to divide and piss off everyone he could by writing a trolling manifesto. So it was his trolling manifesto and the shootings that lit the match to start a war. And I even specified, he ended with Europa Rising, meaning that churches in Europe and churches all over and places all over, the places of worship, would be part of a war. And the war would be of flames. The war would be destruction, a scorched earth policy brought on by trolling. And of course, he used everything in his manifesto from Pepe to other meme magic and talking about different things on the internet. Even the black sun symbol from the Nazis, saying, this is another symbol that, he was using. All of these things to generate that kind of anger, fear, and division. And then it just snowballed from there.
Well, what happened in Notre Dame in particular fits right in with that. I feel like, okay, maybe it is just what they said, an accident. But if it was deliberate and it is a plot, what kind of plot would it be? It's a very, very multi-layered plot. Because here's what I think is, honestly, my inclination is that's probably what's going on. I don't have any proof at all. It's just an inclination. But so why then didn't they blame it on anybody? Well, because if they were to blame it, say, on Muslim terrorists, they're very careful about not doing that in Europe right now. They're very careful about trying to not blame anything on Muslims, including all the immigrants that they have coming in right now. So even when there's an incident, a police action, an incident, and, a Muslim immigrant is to blame, they really try not to mention it in the news because they just don't want to fan the flames of the civil war that is probably burning in the streets. But there's somebody that does want that. Who knows who they are? I mean, we could all theorize. The internet, of course, likes to theorize that everything is there's some Jewish group behind everything. So even though there's Muslims, maybe are behind some kind of particular incident, the people that embrace the clown world concept often assume that this is some kind of destabilizing plot by a Jewish group. So what I think I see it. I saw it on the internet immediately. The effect of the Notre Dame fire immediately was considered to be both a Muslim terrorist thing that the government didn't want to openly admit to, but also they assume, it's the Illuminati and really, the Jewish conspiracy behind it all, and that they're just trying to destabilize Europe as part of the New World Order plot.
Did you find it interesting that it happened on the first day of Aries?
Yes. And then, so I mentioned the burning of the Easter Man, which is, it's kind of like the Wicker Man, and that they consider it a personification of Judas, so they pretend they're burning Judas. Well, Judas is kind of in old European Christianity from a couple hundred years ago and older. Judas was kind of considered a stand-in, a representation for Jews. So, when they would have these passion plays, there would always be someone playing Judas, and he would always have red hair. And, of course, he was the enemy. I mean, Judas is the guy that just everything gets blamed on. That's he's even called by some authors the Black Christ, because it's like Jesus takes on the sins and pays for the sins, but then Judas gets the blame for everything. And so it's almost like he pays a price equally as much. He's in hell forever. There's
right.
this version, stories of the heroine of hell, where everybody gets out except him.
Well, you do know.
I don't know what's going on, but yeah.
Well, you do know that, you're talking about the burning of the Easter Man. You're talking about, the Easter Man can be seen as Jesus or Judas. But think about this. What about all of the people that witnessed the image of Jesus, or a personification of a god, burning in the flames of Notre Dame? You heard about that, correct?
I did, yes.
And all these people are seeing the effigy of something burning there between the spires of Notre Dame. And they're saying, some people say, I see Christ. Other people say they see Satan. I mean, could it have been a representation of the burning of the Easter Man?
Absolutely, yes. And then in the Sri Lanka bombings, there was a statue of Jesus in one of the churches that's just splattered with everyone's blood now.
Oh, man.
So it's...
Well, and also, too, what was creepy is the beheading of all of the saints before they took the saints' heads off of the statues before they removed them from Notre Dame, and they're standing there with no heads, standing in a group with no heads. It was very terrifying to watch.
And then, and then there's the fact that people think that maybe this was also prophesied by that Pet Goat 2 video.
Oh, I saw that, yes.
I Pet Goat.
I Pet Goat.
So, like, the guy that's in it that looks like Jesus, and he's going down a river on a Egyptian-style boat, like he's in the Egyptian underworld, and behind him there's a cathedral that the spire of it collapses as soon as Jesus takes the crown of thorns off his head, which is exactly what happened in the fire. Like, supposedly there's the priest that ran in and saved the crown of thorns right before everything just, really exploded.
And people can't see this as a ritual. It's too coincidental. It's a ritualistic type of... it's a ritualistic exercise on the day of Aries, the fire sign, the beginning of fire. It's like, okay, how does meme magic really work, especially something like this? In particular, the example we were just talking about with I Pet Goat, which people have been trying to pick apart and analyze for many, many years now, since the Obama days. Once again, that's a movie the internet subculture has had a heyday with. Go ahead, yeah?
Yeah, okay, so people have been trying to figure out what they feel like, okay, this is predicting something, so what is it? And they found several different things. But then this one in particular, it really seems very connected. But what if it's not a plot so much, but it is magic? So when you look at a meme, which is really just a picture with a caption on it, or you look at a video, your eyes are absorbing this stuff. It goes through your optic nerve, and it gets takes on a life of its own, even if you're not thinking about it as much. Especially if you're not thinking about it.
Well, that's exactly what coincidental memes do, is you relate to them, they bring meaningful coincidence to you, and that is the art of magic. That is the art of trying to fool you, or at least to lead you into the world of causal engineering. Tracy Twyman with us tonight on Ground Zero. Some fascinating stuff about what's going on around us. Stay tuned. We got more. 888-673-3700.
FM News 101 KXL.
From the Pacific Office Automation Studios, this is FM News 101 KXL.
Triple 8-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I wanted to quickly, before we go to the top of the hour, if we can, I wanted to talk about just how pervasive internet culture is. You were talking about an 11-year-old autistic boy who's being interviewed on a British TV show, and the things he said were just terrifying. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. I think this video is a couple of years old, but I recently revisited it, and I thought it'd be a cool montage for your show tonight, spliced in. So this kid is on a show about autism in England. He's 11 years old, and they're trying to close the interview, and they ask him what he wants to do when he grows up. So the first thing he says is, I want to fly planes into skyscrapers. And then the host is like getting uncomfortable. He says, okay, well, if you can't do that, then what? And then he says, move to Iraq and become a terrorist. And then
I know
everyone, including the kid's mom, is like so uncomfortable. And then they try to close the show, and the last thing the kid says is, praise Keck.
Praise Keck, of course.
You can tell this
Peppy, the
11-year-old,
yeah.
4chan.
Yeah, I mean, he's so influenced by. Let me play a little bit from that interview. Here we go. This is the interview that Tracy titled. It's really creepy.
What, Hughie, before you get stuck into that water there, what is your aim in life? What would you love to be doing in, say, 10 years' time? Have you thought about it? Because I know you love history, right? You love history?
Driving planes in buildings.
Driving what?
Driving planes into skyscrapers.
Right, well, let's say that's not a career option. What else would you like to do?
Move to Iraq and become a terrorist.
Right, but you're interested in what things like the Vietnam War and World War I, is it? Or things like that? Does history interest you?
Yeah, history. That's very interesting.
And maybe you'd like to get into that side of things when you're older, is that right?
I mean, I definitely like to learn about it. Having it as a career, maybe not, but yeah.
See what happens.
I'll see what happens.
Okay.
I'll see.
Listen, to the three of you, thanks so much for coming in tonight. I really appreciate it. And we're going to direct people in the direction of that documentary, which is enlightening, I think, to people who don't have autism in their family. And we wish you all very well in all the things you want to do in life. And good luck with the documentary and everything you do in the future.
Thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you all very much.
Praise Keck.
And he ends with praise Keck.
Okay.
Yeah, you hear that. It's The Late Show in Britain. It's an interesting interview with a young man who has autism. Obviously, the commentators are uncomfortable, but this is how internet subculture can influence, radicalize, and actually reach certain individuals. And this is what we've been talking about since February, actually. And we'll have more with Tracy Twyman right here on Ground Zero, trying to explain how these radical groups end up becoming more radical, or who's behind it, what power, what force is behind it influencing these radical groups. We've talked about Momus, we've talked about the Trickster, we've talked about Ishtar, we've talked about all of these different types of influences that are part of the occult world. And it's certainly fascinating to see how it all comes together in a form of meme magic and chaos magic that certainly rules the world at the moment. More on causal engineering coming up on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Stay tuned. More from Tracy Twyman. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The number is to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Light a match, spark a war. That is what we talked about back when we were discussing Europa Rising, the shootings in Christchurch. From there came the Notre Dame fires. From there came the other fires and destruction. And it just seems that the cryptocracy wants to put forward memes, meme magic, and the proof is written right into the dates and times of all the global terror events we've had recently. And it's no wonder the catastrophes and murderous attacks happen on dates like March 15th, the Ides of March, of course, with the shooting in Christchurch, or April the 15th, where we saw Notre Dame burned down. Or how about the 19th, or even later? People see the coincidences, but have you ever stopped to ask why? I mean, all the major crimes of world history have all been linked together by a distinct and distinguishable process. And this is how a conspiracy or a conspiracy within the cryptocracy operates. And they use their various cult militias, whether Muslim extremists or rebooted crusaders or trolls or whatever they are. I mean, when we look at the Synarch, when we look at the cryptocracy, we look at the smoke and the mirrors and the false flag culture we're in right now, every group in alleged secret society is focusing on its very own version of the end times. And in essence, they're grouping themselves together to push the proverbial snowball down the mountain. And so the result is a destruction of all religion to be replaced with some sort of Luciferianism. And the idea of all sovereignty to be replaced by a tyrannical global plantation. That is the goal. I mean, the internet is now calling it a clown world, meaning that most of what we experience is not making sense. It is a world run by the old cosmic trickster. Everything is either fake, or there's a cluster of those who want YouTube hits that call everything a false flag, or they do meme magic or whatever, and they're all they're child conjurers. That is what is happening. I mean, I remember reading about the trickster and Momus with Charles Ford. Later, I heard about it in mythology, and it even proposed that, a clown or the clown came from the trickster mythos. I mean, Kenneth Anger tackled the subject of Lucifer as the bringer of light and the cosmic trickster in his movie Lucifer Rising. There is a theory that there is a manipulative God apart from the devil that is meant to create meaningful chaos. And this God is much like the Gnostic demiurge that is in the business of creating various forms of disaster and tragedy, but with an extra sense of art. And it's always delivered like a poetic and choreographed train wreck, leaving the signature, the dates, the times, the quirks, all those things that amuse, enlighten, and confuse people. And I believe that the trickster is always there to make you question and it causes you to kind of go, wait a minute, am I seeing things? I mean, this seems to be the century and quite possibly the millennium of the trickster and his ability to confuse and amuse and never ceasing to amaze. That's why so many people right now are seeing the reality around us as a show with actors that are creating drama that seems so rehearsed. I mean, we've been so programmed. We've been desensitized to all of it. Harrowing events and all these things we've seen in Hollywood. Hollywood's conditioned us. Books have conditioned us. Comic books have conditioned us. It's a forced structuring, and it's uncanny that every tragedy we see on the nightly news seems faked. Or the reason may be simple as what we're exposed to every day in the media. I mean, you look at the Christchurch Mosque, where it was carried out on the Ides of March. Was that by accident, or was it a way to create a synchronistic joke and a mocking by the trickster? I mean, think of the headlines that flashed on the internet. Muslims slaughtered in Christchurch. I mean, the whole sentence is a mockery. The idea of it happening on the Ides of March or during the rise of Mars was either on purpose or part of a sinister coincidence created by the cosmic trickster, the act of a clever devil. And of course, Mars is considered the god of war. And the clever devil struck again when the Cathedral of Notre Dame was set ablaze on the day of Aries. Mars, of course, is Aries' ruler, and Aries is the first fire sign of the zodiac. Again, this is more of a pattern that we shouldn't ignore it. It's a blatant attack that is deeply and broadly satanic, or at least occult-like. Tracy Twyman here with us tonight on Ground Zero to give her views on what's been happening. And certainly, we went from Momus to talking about the burning of the Easter Man to, and it all goes back to, I was doing research, for those of you who just tuned in, I was doing research on Ishtar. I was doing research on all of the things that I've done in the past. And the seance that Tracy Twyman and I did back in, 2014 on Halloween, came back and there was a transcript of all the things that, we'd been talking about the hag, for example. I talked about the succubus and the hag, and I've talked about Baba Yaga and Momo and La Llorona and all of these characters that are a representation of the hag. The idea of the pigs and how pigs seem to be in the news a lot lately. They were reactivating the brains of pigs. Jesus casting demons into the pigs. I mean, it all seemed to be coming together in some strange, chaotic magic thing. And I think, Tracy, I think you elaborate more on some of the other things that were said in the seance that certainly have some connections to what we're talking about now, because it just seems like 5 years ago, all of this was being talked about on the show. We had no idea, no clue what was being said.
Yeah, and like I said last hour, it's amazing that the clown element of what was said in that seance now makes sense, where it made no sense whatsoever before. But yeah, Baphomet. We were talking to Baphomet. He talked about dogs of war, unleashing dogs of war. Talked about a portal to hell in Iraq, which at that time was they were in a conflagration with ISIS, who's Ishtar, same thing, and then he kept talking about chaos and the Royal Order of Jesters, and he also referred to the Jokers, and he spelled out chaos, K-A-O-S, the way they spell it in chaos magic, which is a way of using magic using the forces of chaos in a magic rite in order to distort reality in a somewhat unpredictable way, but you're still sort of putting in the elements of what you want to create, and then letting the chaos do what it will with it. And another thing that I think I was emailing you about today that seems to me somewhat connected is the story of the Trojan War and the Judgment of Paris, where it's called the Judgment of Paris, where Paris, the guy in Greek mythology, who's Paris, the city of Paris is named after. In this story, he was asked to judge who is the prettiest among the three main goddesses. So it was Aphrodite, who's usually considered the prettiest, and that is who he chose, and then Artemis and Athena. So they got the goddess of war, the goddess of wisdom. And it was because he chose one, and the other ones got mad, and that resulted in them taking sides in what became the Trojan War. And so even though it was people fighting each other, they were doing so on behalf of gods and at the manipulation of gods or goddesses who were just using them as chess pieces to battle with each other. But the way it got started, the reason why they were having this argument about who is the prettiest or the fairest, as it specifically says, the most pale really is how that translates. But the reason why they were having this argument is because the trickster goddess in that story, Eris, the chaos goddess, she threw in what is called an apple of chaos or discord, threw a golden apple into this party that was happening, and it said "to the fairest" on it, and that started this whole contest of who's the prettiest goddess that ended up unleashing all of this chaos and war. So I find it interesting that one of the main things we're talking about here tonight is these coincidences involving one of them, the fires in Notre Dame in Paris, and most of the cathedrals in Europe and certainly in France are built on what used to be goddess worship sites. So a lot of people see the Virgin Mary as just another a more modern version of Isis or Ishtar. She's really got all the same symbolism, the same iconography. She looks identical. So you could think of these church attacks and/or accidents as this is something happening to the worshipers of, at least in somebody's view, Isis or Ishtar, the goddess worshipers. So yeah, it's like it's this amazing thing, pregnant with meaning that's happening here, and so I had this novel called Genuflect that came out a couple years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
It was about It was about alchemy and magic and things, monumental things happening in London in April. That it all ties into Easter rituals. So as I was writing this thing, I really felt guilty writing it because I felt like, okay, I'm doing mean magic here or something like that. I felt like this is going to manifest somehow.
Right.
I won't give away the plot, but I felt like, okay, if I write this down, I'm scared that this is going to trigger similar, big monumental and bad events that are portrayed in the novel. Mm-hmm. And one of the lines that I put at the beginning of one of those chapters is a quote from T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, and that poem starts off with these words: "April is the cruelest month." Now, I was using that in a different context, talking about something else. But what's interesting is that the Pope, when he was, making a speech about these attacks in in Sri Lanka, he used the word "cruel" over and over again. And, sure, it's a word that applies to an attack like this of people, at church on Easter. It is cruel. Mm-hmm. But it's a very specific word for him to use over and over again. So I felt like these symbols from works of art and poetry, it goes back a long way. It goes, even when I look at this Wasteland poem, which is full of all sorts of weird references that I don't think anyone has ever really decoded yet. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a lot of things that could be interpreted as prophecies of what's happening now. Well, and
I got to tell you, it was Friday. I was going to do a show about. I was going to come to the conclusion. I was going to talk about Ishtar. I was going to do a show Friday. Instead, we did a show for 420 instead. But I was just saying, I prepared a show for Ishtar, and I wanted to talk about the 7 plagues, and I wanted to talk about the churches burning and how they all come together. And since I did not do the show on Friday that I wanted to do about that, I was doing another show that was already planned in ahead. I did a thing on my End of the World podcast that talked about this, and I thought, as I was talking with Janine over the weekend, I was saying, I feel a little responsible here because I wanted to wrap everything up, and then this happened, and I'm kind of like now breathing a sigh of relief saying, I'm glad I didn't talk about it because then it would look as though that I was creating meme magic. And it really kind of, you wonder if you read about it, you dabble in it, you talk about it, you become part of it. And it's always been my fear because of what I've been talking about. I've been talking about, of course, Momo, the Baba Yaga. I've been talking about, La Llorona, and of course the image of Mary, Ishtar, all of these images of the hag, the succubus. I mean, it just seems to all be coming together, and it's all ending up in these fires and this horrible attacks, and it's just a strange occult maneuvers that seem to all be falling together in some strange way. 888-673-3700. We're going to get your phones coming up on Ground Zero. Don't go away.
Back to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Tracy Twyman, my guest tonight on Ground Zero. We're talking about the fires, the occult connections, all kinds of craziness, and it all goes back to a transcript I found about a seance that we conducted on Halloween here on the show back in 2014, and all the things that we were talking about during that seance that Tracy brought in her own Ouija board actually talks about what's going on right now. And it's just peculiar as to how, it was by accident that I stumbled upon this as I was doing research on all of the rituals regarding Beltane and Ishtar and all the things that happen during Easter. So I'm going to go to the phones right now. Let's go to Jeff in Rhode Island. Hi, Jeff. You're on Ground Zero with Tracy Twyman. Go ahead.
Hey, kids. I have a few questions for you both. Well, first of all, what is Keck? And second question, you mentioned earlier a few times, you mentioned Peppy the Frog, and that's a new one on me. I wish could you explain who that is?
Sure. Let Tracy first, and then if you have another one, we'll
yes, I do have another one.
All right, go ahead, Tracy. Explain what Keck is and what Peppy the Frog is.
Okay, so Pepe is a meme that's been around since like 2009, maybe 2011. It's been a long, long time, and it was very innocuous for a long, long time and very popular. And then it got incorporated by the 4chan online community into their imagery that they were using in promotion of Donald Trump, and in promotion also of, I mean, it was even more subtle than that. It's the idea of using mean magic, as we're describing it, and forces of chaos to bring things about. Now, so he originally was a cartoon frog named Pepe. Then as they were working with him and using and making memes with him, some people discovered that there's a god of chaos in Egyptian pantheon named Kek that has a frog head. And there were many other coincidences and things that seemed to connect these things. So the 4chan community jumped on that, and they connected Pepe, and they said, basically declared Pepe to be a manifestation of Kek. And even Donald Trump and people for his campaign in the beginning, in the early days, they were utilizing these memes and putting them on Twitter and stuff. And then Hillary Clinton responded, and she said that Pepe was a symbol of hate.
Yeah, and they made it. So they reversed they reversed the label on the character, making him a symbol of hate. And if anybody posts him, they're considered white supremacists, and it's just amazing how it all changed and went awry. Okay, Jeff, what?
And it's spelled Pepe, like of Spanish.
Pepe the Frog, yeah. And he is nicknamed Kek. Kind of a strange mean magic thing. What else, Jeff, quickly?
And also you mentioned this time that you and Tracy 5 years ago at the Halloween show did the Ouija board seance. Okay, so I understand it was a Halloween show, but why ever? I have heard you time and again warning us, telling us do not be doing.
I've never said that on the air. I've never said that on the air.
With Ouija board.
I've never said that. That's George Norrie. I've never said that. Never.
Oh, so you do play with?
I do. Yes, if they're needed. Yes, I do. I think they're great.
You opened the thing, but
I think they're great tools, and if they're done well, if they're used well, then there's no
I have
problem.
Another question.
No, you don't. I gotta go.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I gave him 3 questions. Oh, come on. Come on, dude. I gave you 3 questions. Now the guy's angry. All right, we'll be back with Tracy Twyman right here on Ground Zero. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. The number's to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll get to more phones. We've got to ask Tracy a question and see what she has to say about this. So I'm getting some emails, okay, that are telling me that there are 3 things I need to ask you about. And 2 of the things I don't know anything about really. One of the things I know a little bit about because I have a stepson who plays games. Okay, 1, the Battle of Winterfell on Game of Thrones. 2, the Avengers Endgame, saying that we may see some very interesting metaphors and memes from both the Battle of Winterfell and the Endgame from Avengers. And Assassin's Creed apparently details at least a destruction of Notre Dame, and that they're using that game to reconstruct the cathedral. What do you know?
Yeah, well, I know nothing about the first 2, but I do know about games, and I've never played Assassin's Creed, but I know that, yes, the cathedral is in the game, the latest version of the game, so every detail of it is in there. And the game will actually be one of the sources of information of how to reconstruct it. There's also someone that came in and did a total 3D scan of the thing, and that's going to be another source of information. But yes, Assassin's Creed is one of the resources we have that documents what all the details were of this church. And what was interesting, I thought, was that we actually ended up bringing up the subject of Assassin's Creed when we were doing that seance 2 years ago. because one of your employees mentioned it, and he went on the air actually to talk about how there was Apple symbolism that was, I forget the details, but it was like, it's so similar what Baphomet was saying about this apple. It was so similar to what's in this, not the latest Assassin's Creed, but the one that was, that this guy was talking about back then. He was saying, like, oh, it sounds like Baphomet's talking about Assassin's Creed. Of course, the Assassins were guys, they're considered like the Muslim equivalent of the Templars, and they were contemporary. And although the Assassins and the Templars were alleged enemies, there's even people that think that they made deals behind the scenes and they were kind of two arms of the same group, or that they had connections. So it's all very very coincidental for sure. And
well, I guess I'm not a Game of Thrones person. I've only seen like 3 episodes, but maybe I should tune into the Battle of Winterfell. I don't know if it's coming up or if it's happened. Of course it's happened, because I guess you can binge watch. I'm not sure. But
right, I'm so happy to hear you say that, though.
What?
Thank you for not liking Game of Thrones. I've never seen it either. It's okay. I'm not saying it's bad. It may be a great show. Apparently it is. But it's like, why is there all this pressure on me to watch this show? So I'm glad there's another one out there. Maybe
it's because of all of our medieval studies of occult ritual and, dragons and zombies and all this other stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I've never found time to watch it. I am watching the OA, though. That's a different thing. The OA seems to be along the lines of what I'm looking at. That's the consciousness level, dimensional travel, and life after death, which is something I'm sure a lot of people in the pop culture are looking into right now. We're going to go to, let's go to Derek. Good. Derek in Massachusetts. Hi, Derek. You're on Ground Zero.
Wow, Clyde. Phenomenal show. My mind is blown.
Well, thank you.
I was actually one of the emails who talked to you about Game of Thrones and Avengers.
Okay.
I have a pretty big credit for you.
All right.
First, Tracy, I'm a huge fan, and your Mithras research really sparked me on my own research quest. I just want to say it's an honor to talk to you. And
thank you.
So I've been calling over the last few months to talk about all these events in the context of them being ritual on something I call like the river portal ley line grid system. And I quote you a lot, talking about from like 2 years ago on like a different interview. You talked about how one of these possible end goals is to collapse the pillars and resurrect the Titans and bring New Jerusalem. Do you remember that at all?
I know that I've talked about that. Yeah.
So I call about all these events in the context of them being rituals on this grid system that I think is a glimpse into the construct of the matrix that we're in. And I've linked them to rivers and to ley lines. And you mentioned the Stargate in Iraq. I actually emailed Clyde at 10 o'clock about there's a list, a pretty mainstream list of 10 possible Stargates, and one of them is in Sri Lanka. And over the past bunch of months, I've been calling about how these events are on ley lines, but they're all on rivers and they're on ley lines. These mounds or pyramid sites that I think are like it's the actual metaphysical prison of the Titans, and the Titans theme is all over the place in the media. So,
well, it's in the Avengers, of course.
Exactly.
Thanos is a Titan, so there you go.
Here we go. I'm getting there right now.
Okay.
No.
Go ahead.
So Titan themes everywhere. Godzilla, for instance, like if you watch the Godzilla trailer, like it starts out by the narrator talking about how like the rise of the Titans to take their place as rightful rulers of the planet. Rock's new like American Ninja Warrior show, where you're the Olympians trying to climb the mountain to overthrow the Titans and become the Titans. In Avengers comics right now, they're actually living. Their home base is the body of a dead celestial Titan in the Arctic. And then in Game of Thrones, in the Avengers, or Game of Thrones, the main you have to watch it for research. It's a shame you don't. It's so unbelievably esoteric. So look at the imagery of the wall collapsing, and that lets the Night King and the hordes of the dead into the realm. Literally, they call it the realm, and that's the main battle that's happening. And this weekend is that battle. They're literally charging at
Winterfell
right now. The Battle of Winterfell is happening this coming weekend, the same weekend as Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, the Battle of Winterfell and Endgame are happening at the same time, and someone told me, Clyde, you need to see this because a wall came down looking like looking like Notre Dame, And this is very synchronistic because the Battle of Winterfell is going to open up a portal allowing the denizens from hell to come out and fight.
That was me.
Was that you? Okay, I guess that was you. Somebody had told me, I'm like going, oh wow, this is a lot here. I don't know what to do. So go ahead.
So that imagery of the wall coming down, I mean, it's Notre Dame, but I think that's the bigger concept of the collapsing of this metaphysical grid to release, to merge the realms. In the current, like Marvel in the comics, their big event they've been hyping up for like 5 years now is War of the Realms, where the 9 realms of the Viking mythology collapse and the demons. And Sabrina, it's the same thing of season 2.
Oh yeah, Sabrina going into hell to go after her loved one. It's like Persephone going into the underworld.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
The catchphrase or the main quote of this final season in this big battle against the hordes of the dead is, "We're in the end game now," from Game of Thrones. And Avengers Endgame, Thanos is called the Mad Titan, and he lives on Titan. And it's honestly like when I figured that, when I watched the most recent one yesterday, and I realized that it was happening on the same day or the same weekend of Endgame, and I got chills thinking like, oh my God, something might
So this is a message you think they're sending us, some sort of a pre-programmed forestructuring of a major battle, maybe Armageddon? Who knows?
Their actual goal is to literally collapse like this. It's a natural grid on every planet that links the entire universe together like Inger's web. And Crowley and and CERN and everything in history has been trying to co-opt this natural grid by doing these rituals on the sacred site in order to fry the grid. It happened on Mars. It happened to Atlantis. To fry the grid, to resurrect, to break this metaphysical barriers between the realms and bring in the hordes of demons because they think they're not going to suffer the consequences.
Wow.
To bring this new Jerusalem, this new Garden of Eden, linked by the rivers, to quote Tracy.
Is that part of the seventh plague where they're saying the river Euphrates will dry up and that will open the gates of hell for Armageddon to take place? Didn't it say that in the seventh plague? Something. I think that's what it. I don't know. This is, Derek. I'll tell you, this is too creepy even for me. I mean, I don't even know.
But it's everywhere, man. I've been trying to tell you.
I know, but still, dude, it's too creepy to even venture towards. I mean, you know how crazy you sound, right? And I mean, you don't sound that crazy to me. But I'm just saying, people are out there going, "What the hell's this guy saying?" You know?
Believe me, I know. But once you see it, once it clicks, then it's everywhere, and that's why.
Once again, the augmented reality and predictive programming, the subculture is basically beckoning us and telling us an end game is afoot. A battle of Winterfell is afoot. There's to raise the Titans from the ashes, and it just seems to me
open the abyss.
Yeah, open the abyss. You know what they said about Abaddon and Apollyon, both Titans in their own way. They're the destroying angels coming sometime soon. That's amazing. What do you think, Tracy?
Well, I would like to add one more thing here, which is the connection with the Garden of Eden, which is like the center. It's the same as paradise. It's the same as heaven. It's like it's the little connection between our world and the heavens, and it's like a metaphysical realm inside of physical space that is really the womb, or the place where all that stuff came from, and it's like safe inside of. It's a safe place for the gods inside of our world of chaos that we're in now. And he's talking about that maybe the destruction of cathedrals, for instance, and other sacred sites is like collapsing the pillars that separate heaven and earth to merge them together, which is something you and I have both talked about quite a lot. Okay, so did you know that Sri Lanka is considered by many people to possibly be the actual Garden of Eden?
Really? I didn't know that.
Now, you'll find many articles on this because it's one of the places that has so many. This is like the origin of so many of our species, plant species, bug species, and animal species. So, and that's just one of the reasons why people think that. There's quite a few reasons. There's mythological reasons as well. But anyway, yeah. So I just think that's significant. That's it.
Yeah, you were talking about what we were talking about. I remember the word apex what was it? Something apex. The apex is about to be revealed, or they call it where the tent pole rises everything up and everything gathers around it, and it's the central point of the earth. I remember during the seance saying something about the apex. I can't remember exactly what it was. Saying that the apex
well, that
would
would
be
be the tip of Mount Analog.
Yeah.
It's the tip of the invisible mountain that's bigger than any other mountain.
Right.
It's really the holy mountain, but we just can't see it.
Yeah, it holds up the sky according to the legends. You know, it holds up the sky. That's what it was, and that it would be declared and found before the end of the world is declared. It's just yeah. Anyway, Tracy Twyman with us tonight on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
From the Pacific Office Automation Studios, this is FM News 101 KXL.
Tracy Twyman is my guest tonight on Ground Zero. And so, Tracy, in finality, what can we do to wrap all this up to actually maybe even see what's coming in the future with all this? It just seems to me that there's so many different memes and force structuring and, the revelation of the method is what we call it, the predicted program aspect of what's going on here. What do you see?
I expect to see more church fires. You know, this fire in Notre Dame is really part of a pattern of church fires that have been happening all over Europe. It's been going on for a while. And you know what's another thing that's interesting? Okay, I don't know if the movie's out yet, or I don't know what happened to it, but I heard like a few weeks ago that they're making a movie, or they have made a movie based on the book Lords of Chaos, which is about black metal musicians in Sweden and other countries in that same area where they were pagans, and a lot of them, back, I don't know, maybe in the 90s, were responsible for burning churches there as a protest against Christianity, and even some people died in these church fires. So it's interesting that movie is around now, and it's the subject of burning church fires. It talks about the title of it is Lords of Chaos. I think there's going to be more church fires, and I think that's just part. It's the symbolism of the Great Conflagration at the end. When everything burns up except what's inside of the New Jerusalem, which becomes the new earth in Revelation. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but
right.
That's the symbolism.
Well, that makes sense because they were talking about bringing out the Devil's Bible. And I talked about the Devil's Bible before all this went down, and I remember saying that the Devil's Bible they were thinking about having it go on tour, and in it there is the depiction of the Bible, the ram-looking Bible with the horns, which represents Aries. And then, of course, he's looking at the city as it's on fire, the new city, as they called it, on fire. And I thought that's an interesting metaphor to be, kind of bringing out, especially when we hear of the fire burning at Notre Dame. And then, of course, more fires and more imagery of the leveling and the scorched earth policy that brings about the New Jerusalem. And I think you're right, because I just saw the symbolism of Aries. I saw the symbolism of the devil. That's why they call it the Devil's Bible, because it's the Gigas. It's the Codex Gigas Codex, and the devil is right there, huge, with the horns and looking at the burning city. And I just think to myself, wow, that definitely sends out a message that we need to be aware. I don't know what we're going to do to protect ourselves, but places of worship are now not safe, especially in times like these. Tracy Twyman, thank you so much for being on the program tonight and bringing a little clarification to some of the occult symbolism that is happening around us right now.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hey, if you want to know more, guys, about what I'm writing about and what I'm doing these days, go to plusultraclub.com.
Plusultraclub.com. That's plusultraclub.com. You won't regret it, because there's a lot of information that Tracy puts out all the time. Plusultraclub.com. Thank you, Tracy, for being on the program.
Thank you.
You have a great night. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.
All right, and that's ground zero for this moment. We're going to stay tuned with some more discussion, your phone calls. It's an amazing time to be alive and seeing these things go down. They are a little spooky, a little weird, but I mean, when you're in the esoteric realm, you see things in a different way. You reveal things, and the revelation is the unraveling in the apocalypse, and we have it right here on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Listen to GroundZero.com online. Listen to GroundZero.com and TalkStreamLive.com as well. And we'll be back with more. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
Is Ground Zero. The number is called tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. So after listening to Tracy, I wonder sometimes about the cosmic trickster, Momus, the clown world that's spoken of in the subcultures of the internet, and how the devil strikes, and how meticulously he plans to do things on the days that certainly mean things to the occult world. I mean, we no longer can dismiss the attacks as purely hyper-reality or predictive programming. It can be seen as the revelation of the method, as there have been patterns to be exploited that led up to these massacres of the believers in God or Jesus Christ. Alan Watt once gave the definitive description of predictive programming. Watt stated that it is the power of suggestion using the media or fiction to create a desired outcome. So for the uninitiated, Alan Watt is actually a philosopher and writer who is a much sought-after speaker on topics dealing with the esoteric. And he's made himself into a self-styled truth seeker and has written several books on the occult. His definition of what we call the revelation of the method is most often abused in the conspiracy fringe circles. And this is because paranoia dictates there's often bad intent with this type of media magic, and at times there is the tendency to write off coincidence and synchronicity as mere fantasies or superstition or magical thinking. However, it's not all out of the question to determine that perhaps there is an agenda in the media. There's an agenda on the internet, and it's there to approximate or force structure events in order to lessen the blow when they occur in our reality or timeline. And people who see the esoteric patterns can be rest assured that as memes and magic are fortified, so will come the rise of curses and other memes that may bring about good fortune. I mean, look, people send those letters all the time. Send this to 50 people telling you love them and you'll get a special prize. You'll get this. They do chain letters on the internet. Well, the same thing occurs with regard to meme magic, but it's more fortified. I mean, if you can see the patterns, you understand what I'm talking about. I know a lot of people are unaware of what meme magic is on the internet, but it should be factored in when we're talking about the revelation of method and predictive programming. There's a reason why. Since February, I was talking about all the memes, and there's still people that say, oh, it's another Momo show, I'm not going to listen. Well, if you don't listen, then fine, I don't care. Because what you're not getting is you're not getting the full spectrum of how all of these images seem to add up. And when the other patterns show up and the other images show up on the radar, and you understand what these images mean in the occult sense, then you'll be able to understand the patterns. Because there have been a number of news events that have transpired, and they've lent themselves to this predictive programming process, the synchronicity process. And you need to keep in mind that predictive programming, in simple terms, is a subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by various forms of media, including the internet and social media, to acquaint the public with planned societal changes that are about to be implemented by those who control the blueprint of what can be called conspiratorial history. They have a blueprint for the future. They have a blueprint to nudge God towards Armageddon. This is what they want to do. They want to level the playing field. They want to immediately create a scorched earth policy to bring about the new city, to bring about the new Jerusalem. And it's going to be done, it's going to be counterfeit. You realize it's going to be a counterfeit city. It's going to be a counterfeit world. If you choose to believe that there's an agenda or plan that is carried out by an Illuminati secret society that has a hold on the media, then of course it will fortify. And you can't rule out the cosmic trickster, because in this world, Strange coincidences and synchronicities indicate that perhaps there is a controller beyond that of a mere secret society. And it's far more paranormal than what we want to accept in our fragile normalcy bias that we have. Things happen for a reason, and they're there to teach us a lesson or warn us of impending danger. They first begin as small patterns of images, and then they turn into words and actions. And then when the curse has been cast, the crescendo results in catastrophe and death. There's a reason why I told you that on the Ides of March there would be an event that would shake us. And when it happened in New Zealand, I hope people were paying attention. And then I said there's a window of opportunity for other horrible events to take place. And what happened? Church of Notre Dame, gone. Burned. Burned on the day of Aries, the fire sign of the zodiac. And yet, you can just write it up for coincidence. You can just say, hey, Clyde, it's just coincidence. This happens all the time. But why is it that these dates matter? Why is it that we see all these dates in April? April, the cruelest month, as Tracy Twyman said. Because it is the time of creating, or at least participating in creating, this ritualistic trauma under the influence of the darker realms, and there are many that operate in all religions and political circles that do this type of ritualism. And they are aware of what you fear, and they create a climate of terror to gather their power, and they want to get power of you and your actions and how you relate and what you do. I mean, you may not realize that most people think and dream in metaphor. A large proportion of our most commonplace thoughts make use of an extensive but unconscious system of metaphorical concepts, that is, concepts from a typically concrete realm of thought that are used to comprehend another. And a lot of people may miss the fact that their unconscious mind registers metaphors all the time. Some are mystified when they see the metaphors for what they truly are. And I know that some people who listen to my show wonder why I conceptualize metaphor and images, and I answer that symbols are what the world is run by. Symbols are what rule our unconscious mind and not words. And these metaphors and these archetypes are very powerful. And that is why we are drawn to them as a culture. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Let's go to Mike in Kentucky. Hi, Mike. You're on Ground Zero.
Clyde, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
You just said it. I was going to mention that the meme bypasses the text, and you don't need the words. The image is all important. The colors are important. If we get flashing epileptic type seizure advertisements on our computer in the lower right-hand screen. I think that things are speeding up. Things are on an accelerated schedule. Like technology is driving it. Technology is fully behind it. Like somewhere in it, the right frequency comes out. But it's not new. It's not new. I mean, overlords of Scandinavian origin in the Norman conquest, they land in Italy and in the Mediterranean. And just because, Roman Catholicism assimilates Mongols doesn't mean that they've not given up on their shamanism. The division where the church was all science, math, hope, everything. They had an 11th century thing that kind of led to like a feudalism where they said, hey, all of a sudden, you're not preaching the canon. You're perpetually driving us towards these ceremonial pagan type celebrations throughout the year. You've got us tied down on that. You've hit us on sex, the most basic thing. You've called it dirty, and now you've got us forever. And things are waking up. The Muslims are pissed. They've always been pissed. I remember when in 2000 when Pope John Paul got on TV and admitted the sins of the Catholic Church. What happened a year later? These are groups of people where if you say you're sorry, it's a sign of weakness.
I agree. I say that the minute you show fallibility, especially when it comes to the occult realms, you're attacked by the darkest of demons. And if you allow yourself to be fragile, you will be fragile.
Kind of gimpy, you're going to get attacked.
Right. Well, if you appear fragile, you'll be broken, and that is the point. I don't think people understand that the war between good and evil is not just some Hallmark card description. It is a war. It is a fight. It is powers that we don't understand. It's memes, it's symbols, it's words, it's actions. And people just think, oh, it's okay. God will control it. Well, you know what? God is not going to just step in and say, hey, you guys, you screwed up all this time and I'm going to come and help you. He doesn't do that.
Everybody's a soft target because they're so forgiving. They tell you, you're going to turn the other cheek. Well, when do you run out of people to turn the other cheek? Right? I mean,
well, there's always this chance.
Stands up and fights.
Well, there's always this chance of repentance. There's always this chance of being penitent, and there's always a chance for forgiveness. And those are the godlike qualities that we're supposed to have. But in this process, we must not and should not allow ourselves to look fragile or weak in this time of the darker powers willing to attack. And this is what we see now. And what really aggravates me is when we're looking at, as Tracy had pointed out, we're looking at what happened in Notre Dame. You look at what happened in Notre Dame and they say, well, we don't want to go as far as to say it was some sort of attack. It was an accident. Really, it was an accident on a day that was set aside to issue the fire sign. It is well calculated and well performed. And if it was just an accident, then we know that there's a darker power out there that's making things happen. That is the trickster and the devil himself.
Then it's almost like it's a manifest accident.
It was a manifestation, exactly. Something manifested it to make it look like an accident, rather than having the physical activity going on. Something spiritual, something dark happened. That's why people were seeing images in the flames. It was there to send a message and to send a signal.
Earlier, and you could go down the line and ask 5 people what they saw. And, the first guy's like, I saw a demon. The next guy I saw Jesus. The next guy, I saw a unicorn. The next guy sees Beetlejuice,
exactly.
And then the next guy sees...
It just depends. It just depends on what they have in their soul and what they have in their heart. Hell is a place on earth, and heaven is a place on earth.
Comprehend. A lot of people that listen to you are starting to feel that, because even if you read the monologue, people, tune yourselves for the future. I don't watch TV. The last movie I saw in a theater was Demon Knights. And before that, it was Beetlejuice. Now, think about that. I landed on your show a couple months ago just because I came from the American Truckers Network, because I found your full length of the show on top.
Thank you, and thank you so much for your support, Mike. Thank you. I just wish that people would stop and understand that knowing is part of the learning process, and keeping yourself rigid and thinking that you're protected is not going to work if you don't have knowledge of what is out there and what the enemy is doing to perpetuate this. It's going to hurt
you in a fall, man.
Yeah,
you're going to get hurt.
Mike,
no doubt.
Thank you for the show. I really appreciate calling. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I cannot stress enough. I mean, you can laugh all you want, but take a look at everything all the way back till February. Go all the way back to February and listen to all the shows we did up until now, and it was all building to this point in time, and it's going to go beyond that. It's going to go beyond that, because this is the falling away. This is the persecution of the saints. This is what they tell you is part of the blueprint of the apocalypse. It's exactly what it is. Now, I'm not saying it's some magical apocalypse. They could be doing this as a blueprint and carrying it out, nudging God towards the end of the world. But look, it's obvious that they're doing it. Obviously want to bring fear into the world. It's obvious they want to desecrate churches and desecrate your way of life. And you're going to stand there and be fragile in the face of it? Or do you want to learn more about how they operate? Because this is how they operate. It's not what you believe, it's what they believe. And what they believe is you need to die. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
This is Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Triple 673-3700. Let's go to JC in Ohio. Hi, JC. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde. Nice to talk with you again. I'm praying for you and your wife, as usual.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to provide a little historical context for your confab tonight, especially about Ishtar, and also going back to another of your great shows about Saturnalia. And what happened in reality was around, just about 300 years after Jesus, the fall of the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church needed to have all of these followers come in line. But unfortunately, most of them were pagans. And they followed the spring equinox and a festival they called Ishtar, which you know the origins of that, and another one in the winter equinox was Saturnalia. And so what the church did at the time, rather than change all these people's minds, is to indoctrinate, and that's the correct word, indoctrinate the pagan festivities into Catholicism at the time. And what's really fascinating is that they took the birth of Jesus and took it from what it says in the Bible from October, which was when Mary and Joseph were in Bethlehem for the census and the sheep were still in the field, which would not happen in December. They moved that conveniently through the Gregorian calendar. How did Deca, meaning 10, become December? How did the 10th month get to be the 12th? Well, they added July and August for Julius Caesar and Julia Augustus, and conveniently indoctrinated again the pagan festivities into what they wanted to have, the dogma, so that it was easier to have the followers go with the new doctrine of the church. And so this is a historical fact. And then, as a result, everything was changed, and it was the Great Deception occurred. And remember, it also says the whole world is deceived. Well, this is the historical context of it, Clyde.
Well, obviously, yes. There are, like you said, the conceptualization or the conceptual nature of the symbols and signs all are interchangeable with that of the pagan symbols. And that's why when Tracy brought up the idea of Isis and Ishtar and Mary all looking pretty much the same, the churches being burned are actually attacks on Mary as well as Jesus, as well as the church. And so therefore it must be said that they are also attacks on the image of Isis or the image of Ishtar or Easter. And it happened on Easter Sunday, which makes it even more hideous. And it just strikes me as, showing that we have a weakness within the church that, the occultists want to exploit. And in the process, they are burning down the churches and they're persecuting the Christians and the saints. And this is the beginning of what we're seeing is the falling away in the apostasy. And it's frightening to think that the city that will be there will be burning, allowing for the leveling and the scorched earth policy that will bring about the new city and the new Jerusalem that certainly will not be anything more than a covetous counterfeit of what we've been told is supposed to be coming in our future. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Is this what was foretold in the Bible? Think about that for a moment. Talking about the persecution of the saints and those who are being attacked for what they believe. I just posted a picture of the blood-spattered Jesus that was there in Sri Lanka, and I just think to myself, this is, like Ron said, it just makes your heart sink and makes you feel sick, even think this is going on. 888-673-3700. Let's go to Floyd in Oregon. Hi, Floyd. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde. What an amazing show. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you.
What really caught my attention with your show is when you were talking about the Templars and the Assassins. And the Templars were a group of knights that were founded in 1119 in Jerusalem. And they originally had a cover story that they were there to just protect the pilgrims going to the Holy Land. But actually what they did is they excavated underneath the King Solomon's temple, and they retrieved holy relics, they retrieved sacred knowledge, and they brought that into Europe, and they became very, very powerful over in Europe. And one of the places that I went to when I was there was called Chartres Cathedral. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay, it's right outside of Paris. It's an amazing cathedral that the Templars actually constructed. And what is quite interesting, and it ties in directly with what Tracy was talking about, is that this cathedral was built on a pagan site, a Druid site. And you go into the church and there's just all kinds of symbolism that is not Christian. They have a giant zodiac in there. They have a labyrinth. Do you know what a labyrinth is?
Yeah, it's kind of a maze, or that's how I would explain it. It's kind of a maze or a strange, where you have to find your way around it, yeah.
It is. It doesn't have any dead ends. It always leads to the center, which can trace it back to what? Back to the ancient Greeks, right? The labyrinth and the Minotaur. Mm-hmm. They actually have a stone labyrinth in the cathedral. And what's ironic is, do you know have you been to the grotto here in Portland, Oregon?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, if you go to the upper level, they actually have an exact replica of that labyrinth from Chartres Cathedral up there that people walk for meditation. So it's very interesting how these, different, religious groups adopt the symbolism. And so in Chartres Cathedral, if you go down into the crypt down below, there's actually a giant statue, a carved wooden statue of a woman with child, and it's dark wood, and they call it the Black Madonna, and it sure sounds like that could be a representation of ISIS. Underneath this church.
Definitely so. Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, it's very, very fascinating. And so the Templars, when they came to Europe, they obviously had a lot of power. I think that information that the church was scared about. And then they were put down in 1307, and then they branched out and they morphed into the Masons. So you have all these different secret societies, the Masons, the Rosicrucians, Illuminati, and they all use symbols and rituals to convey their philosophies. And they do that through many methods. Through masonry, they do that through ritual. For a short time, I was invited into the Masonic group, Scottish Rite, and when I was in there for a short time, I noticed a lot of Templar symbolism just because I was familiar with it, because I had researched it, and I was quite amazed. At any rate, so each of these secret societies, they have their own symbols and their own means to convey that. And what I'm wondering, and what I want to ask you, Clyde, is so who do you think the trickster really is? Do you think the trickster is the devil, or do you think, the more I research this type of thing, the more I go back to William Bramley's Gods of Eden, and he talks about how he believes that ETs came down and basically founded a lot of the major religious systems in order to kind of keep everybody in conflict, because that way we're easier to control. So I want to ask you, do you think the trickster is a devil? Do you think it could be these extraterrestrial beings that are manipulating us?
Well, I mean, if you know anything about Charles Fort, what he wrote about the trickster, he always says there was a cosmic trickster. Basically, the idea is they're kind of like the demiurge from the time of the Gnostics. And just the idea that there's always been an opposition. There's always been a group, whether it be supernatural or otherwise, that is there to kick us when we're trying to climb, or trying to pester us when we're trying to get something accomplished that's good. Many times good is thwarted, and people who do badly always seem to succeed. Well, that's the fool's game. It's about the fool itself. I mean, when you look at the trickster, it's represented by the fool card. The fool card in the tarot decks. So what you're looking at is foolish moves, foolish games, and foolish outcomes, based primarily upon some trickster who, like I think Shakespeare had said something to the effect, "As flies to wanton boy, so are we to the gods. They abuse us for their own pleasure." Well, the gods, of course, he's talking about are the trickster gods, the gods that are demonic, the gods that are satanic, the gods that they create mischief. So that's how I picture it to be. That's how I picture the idea of the trickster. That's what I see him as.
That's interesting. The way you describe that kind of reminds me of the Viking god Loki.
Yes, exactly. Loki, the mischievous god. I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, and in effect, though, it also kind of, to me, sounds like the devil as well. Because if you look in parts of the Bible, like, say, for example, Job, it's like the devil came to God, and they, like, it was almost kind of like a bet. Like, oh, let's see, I'm going to make you a bet that I can turn this good man, and I can, give him a hard time, and he won't follow you. To me, that kind of falls along that lines in my line of thinking.
Well, that's how I see it too. I would just see it that there's always something there, and temptation is only part of it. But the follow through is what's interesting, and how people react to it and what they do. And like they always say, God moves in mysterious ways, but so do his followers. They move in mysterious ways as well. The devil moves in the same way, and his followers are mysterious in what they do, far more darker than we can even imagine. It's the idea that it's not flesh and blood we fight against, but principalities in high places, meaning that demonic activity going on in places of power. And so it's always been that way for me with regard to the trickster. Some people there, and I've said before, it's not what you believe, it's what they believe and what they enact upon. And you need to understand what they believe, because you can have all the faith in the world of God and Jesus and what have you, and that's great. But, you need to know how to combat the evil forces that have belief systems that are not your own. And people tend to shy away from them because they're afraid they're going to fall for them. But the thing is, if you put on the armor of God, which is the whole point, you'll be able to defend yourself against such temptation and such horrible things.
Well, in just what you're saying, it totally reminds me, and you've spoke about this many times, about retrocausality. You have these different groups, and they claim to have their own sacred knowledge or secret knowledge about how things are supposed to turn out, and they want to usher that in. They want to make those things happen.
Yeah, and like I say, it's the idea that they can nudge God in directions, and I mean that in a metaphorical way. I don't know that anyone can nudge God, but what I'm saying is that if their second coming can't happen, they'll make it happen, and they'll fake it if they're that cynical and conspiratorial. And I wouldn't doubt for 1 minute that a counterfeit Christ could be made to look like the real thing, and people would follow, without even realizing just how easy it is to manipulate them. We are in a fragile time right now. People are God-loving, and they are certainly welcome, and they are, and that's the problem, is they're welcoming this sort of thing in out of tolerance. And yes, they turn the other cheek, but now we have to have active conscience and vigilance. I think we have to have constant vigilance with regard to what is happening here, and I think that it's important to do so, and it's not evil to think that way, in my opinion.
Right. Well, Clyde, thank you so much. I just get so much out of listening to your show.
Thank you.
It's mind-blowing, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling. I really appreciate it, too. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. More Ground Zero and discussion from some amazing calls tonight. We thank you for calling in. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Back with more Ground Zero. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
From the Pacific Office Automation Studios, this is FM News 101 KXL.
Let's go to Carlos in California. Hi, Carlos. You're on Ground Zero.
Good evening, Clyde. Would the previous caller mentioned the Druids, and April the 20th and 31st historically are the blood ritual offerings, Druid offerings to the sun god Baal. If you go back in history, Waco, Texas, the Branch Davidians were slaughtered on April 20th and 21st, I believe. Oklahoma City bombing happening April 21st. You have Columbine murders, April 21st. You had the occurrence yesterday on April the 21st. To me, these are all derivatives, are somewhat related, I think, to the Druid tradition of bloodbath rituals. And there's people that think that, for instance, they think that the British aristocracy are Druids. That the people in very high places are Druids, so they're they're out there exerting their influence to make sure that all these killings happen around these dates. But what happened here with these churches, I'm afraid that it's part of course, the Hegelian dialectic. One group gets blamed while somebody else does it. Like today, I'm watching television. They're already demonizing Islam. They're saying that they're the ones that did it. Now, investigations are not over, then they already been rushed to judgment, made culpable. So, all this is going to elicit more animosity between religious groups, and I believe this thing is going to intensify somehow. But, I was perplexed by what Ms. Twyman said. She kind of hinted that all these religions are being phased out, churches are being phased out. But what's going to be the resurgence? What's going to be left over? Is there going to be perhaps the building of the third temple? She mentioned
Luciferianism. That's what's going to be. It's going to be replaced by Luciferianism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a scorched earth policy. That's the whole point. And if people aren't educated enough to see it, and that's what bothers me, is that a lot of Christians, they say, well, I don't have time for this. This is not what I believe. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter what you believe. It's what they believe. And they believe that they're going to replace you and your belief systems with Luciferianism. So you must be vigilant. And I don't think people like to hear that, but they're going to have to get tougher because, Christians are, they're good people, and they open their hearts and they open wide their arms, and they say, yes, we're willing to let you in because we're Christians. But it just gets to a point now where we have to say, you know what? Start burning churches and you start doing things like this. We got to stop. We got to stop saying, okay, everybody's welcome here, because, you never know who you're going to let in. It's like back when 9/11 happened. I said, close the borders because, you're a jerk. Now everybody's saying, hey, we need a wall now. That was like what? It was like 18 years later, they say we need a wall. It's like, come on. I mean, and now here we are again with another disaster happening with the churches. And I say, you know what? We need to start being more vigilant. We need to educate ourselves on the occult practices, the evil practices, the secret societies, what they have planned for us. But many people will not because, it's just conspiracy theory. Well, just look at the dates and the times, Carlos. You know as well as I do that this is happening.
Right. But one thing, like Twyman mentioned, the New Jerusalem. Now, was she alluding to the rebuilding of the third temple? Because I think the third temple is Luciferian, isn't it?
That's what I hear.
Yeah, so is the world going to be governed from Jerusalem, from the third temple when it's rebuilt? Because,
that's the idea, is that the Antichrist will anoint his elders. That's the whole conspiracy, is that he'll, that's what the conspiracy theory tells us, is that he'll anoint his elders with the ashes of the red heifer, bringing about the world order.
Right, and the red heifer is already available from what I understand, and all the other ingredients that are necessary. The menorah and all the priests are already ready for the rebuilding of the third temple. And when I see Trump declaring Jerusalem the capital of the capital of the Jews, isn't that sort of an approval or a signal to the Zionists to rebuild their temple? I mean, Netanyahu right away came out saying when Trump declared Jerusalem was going to move his embassy to Jerusalem, right away Netanyahu came out and said, the Temple Mount is now ours. Now, what do you mean by that?
I don't know. Well, why did the stables at Al-Aqsa catch fire at the same time as Notre Dame? Somebody was sending a message, weren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is right there.
Yeah. Dome of the Rock. They set fire to the stables where the Templars would make their plans.
Right. And of course, the been Zionist obsession to rebuild the third temple right there at the same spot. So Al-Aqsa Mosque has got to go.
Well, it has to go in order to get the third temple built. You're right. And it's going to be interesting to see what transpires the next few years. It seems like biblical prophecy is being fulfilled as we speak, Carlos. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is part of the whole blueprint for the end of the world? I don't know. I shake my head every day when I say to myself, either they are doing this because they want you to think we're heading to the end, and they're going to come in and save us at the last minute, or this is really what God is wanting. This is really what is supposed to happen. It's where your dominionist child comes out and says, I've been taught my whole life that I will witness the second coming. I've been taught my whole life that there'll be something happening where there'll certainly be signs that we will have to pay attention to pure evil in the world. And now we're seeing it happen on a day-to-day basis here, and this is what we're talking about tonight. What are your thoughts on this? Would love to hear from you. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We're sailing with the violent waters of the apocalypse, certainly giving the warning for the storm ahead, and we need to be prepared. 888-673-3700. Don't go away.
Their main suspect, as you mentioned, a 37-year-old man.
Hundreds of security forces spread out across the city and raided several apartment buildings searching for the suspect. Schools went into lockdown and mosques were evacuated.
Behind me, crime scene investigators are still here looking for more evidence, piecing together what happened. This as there are many memorials popping up all across this nation. There are more tears.
Appearing defiant, making a hand signal associated with white nationalism. Authorities believe he stormed 2 mosques in the southern city of Christchurch Friday.
They incorporated Templar symbols and traditions into their own secret ceremonies, purposely blurring the line between the Templars and Freemasonry.
Enter our inner chambers and learn our most trusted secrets. Once you cross that threshold, your eyes will be opened, and you will see this world for what it truly is.
I'm Clyde Lewis. Numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. 888-673-3700. Let's go to Michael in California. Hi, Mike. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, how's it going? Okay.
Going well, Mike. How are you?
I was doing my own little research on Momo and the image of it, the meme, and I came up with it. It's pretty much the image of almost a harpy from Greek mythology, or a siren, not to be confused with a mermaid, which is also a siren in Russia, which was pretty much the head and the breast of a woman and the bird of a bird or an owl, and it would lead men or sailors to impending doom with its song, almost like similar to the cry of La Llorona, maybe, or which in English translates La Llorona to the crying or sobbing woman. And I think you're talking about why they shut down the internet in Sri Lanka, and I think the reason why they did it was because if they would have allowed it to continue on, the people would have united, and a purge would have happened, and all Muslims would have been kicked out, kind of like what happened in Myanmar, and it just happened in Ecuador against Venezuelan immigrants. They pretty much went house by house and took out a lot of any Venezuelan immigrants, because I guess they're labeling them as criminals. And you're talking about this clown world, right?
Yeah.
I think this clown world, whatever, it's the globalists laughing their way to the bank, and they're laughing as they're letting in all these hordes of immigrants and refugees, Muslims and Africans, into our country to destroy us. It's like a joke, and they're laughing about it and in our face. And you're talking also about the Crusaders, right?
Yeah.
We're all descendants of the Crusaders, if you think about it. And if you look at heraldry, your family coat of arms, they all have a cross. Why? Because they all went to fight and get the Middle Easterns out of Europe and try to destroy this death cult religion that is going to go out together with these Satan worshippers that are bringing about all this chaos.
We'll just see what has to happen and what will happen. I just think that we'll be seeing more of what's been going on. And it's because of the fact that, what's really weird is that they were warned back on April 4th that this was going to happen. They were told that the churches would be attacked, and they did nothing. And I worry about this because, if you're being told that it's going to happen, you need to take precautions to keep it from happening. And then when all these people die and you're saying it could have been stopped, it could have been held down, and it didn't happen, you worry about how the people were not educated enough to look beyond it and understand that if something is being threatened, you have to be vigilant. That's the bottom line. You have to be vigilant and understand that, vigilance is what is important. If you see something, you say something. If you want to protect those who are worshipers, protect them. Protect the churches, protect the synagogues and the mosques, because they're targets now. And they're targets by these religious sects that don't care about the mainstream groups. They just want to level them all for their own darker commands. Let's go to Michael in Arizona. Hi, Michael. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi.
Hi, man.
It's an honor to speak with you.
Thank you to speak with you. Thank you.
All my life I've tried to be a good Christian, but I've failed many times. And I don't have any prejudices against any of the other religions,
Right.
But for some reason, all my life, books have jumped out at me, and I purchased them. And last week, I was in a used bookstore, and a book jumped out at me, and I purchased it, and it's called The Bible Code, written by a Michael Drosnin, Drosnin. And I'll read a portion of the introduction to you. For 3,000 years, the code in the Bible has remained hidden, but now has been unlocked by computer, and it may reveal our future. The 3,000-year Bible code foretells events that happened thousands of years after the Bible was written. It foresaw both Kennedy assassinations, the Oklahoma City bombing, the election of Bill Clinton, everything from World War II to Watergate, from the Holocaust to Hiroshima, from the moon landing to the collision of the comet with Jupiter. In a few dramatic cases, detailed predictions were found in advance, and the events would happen exactly as predicted. The date of the Gulf War would begin was found weeks before the war started. The date of the Jupiter collision was found months before the blast. This book is based on Drosnin's 5-year investigation. The author interviewed all the experts here and abroad. He spent many weeks with world-class mathematicians who discovered the code. Dr. Eli Rips. And he met with famous mathematicians at Harvard, Yale, and the Hebrew University. He talked to a senior code breaker at the top secret U.S. National Security Agency, who confirmed that there is a code in the Bible that does reveal our future. No one yet knows if the Bible code accurately foretells what is to come. The code may be a warning to this world of unprecedented danger, perhaps a real apocalypse, a nuclear war. In any event, the Bible code forces us to accept that the Bible itself can only ask us to believe that we are not alone. And it raises a question for all of us. Does the code describe an inevitable future or a series of possible futures whose ultimate outcome we can still decide? Now, this was written in 1995. In 1995, the Bible code said that the end times began. The beautiful thing I see in it is that just like Jonah and Nineveh, the prophecies don't have to come true. We can decide the outcome of a lot of these potentialities.
Yes.
And if you can get this book, I think it would.
I've read the Bible code. I've read the Bible code, Michael. I've read it. And it's some amazing stuff in there. And yes, the Bible itself, if it's true that these codes exist, both backwards, forwards, and whatever, then we know it was written and that it was guided by the hand of some being, very advanced being that knows how to hide within the word's code. The Codex, of course, once it's interpreted, brings a lot of revelation, more so than it does just by reading it at face value. It's certainly an interesting idea and certainly a good book to look into. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Tonight on Ground Zero, we're talking about the Easter bombings, the connections we have in the cult groups and the sects that people need to be aware. They just do. I mean, it was really sad, though, that, like I said, they knew that this was going to happen back on April the 4th, and they did nothing to protect themselves. And this is why I worry about, most Christians who they don't want to know, and I think they should. I think they should know, and they should know how to combat it. 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
From the Pacific Office Automation Studios, this is FM News 101 KXL.
Let's go to John in Iowa. Hi, John. You're on Ground Zero.
Good evening, Clyde.
Hi.
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've seen this and may be aware of this, but the hidden temple the hidden third temple for 70 elders was dedicated on Hanukkah of last year. And on YouTube, there's a video of a guy who had received a tour of this complex, which is underground against the Western Wailing Wall. And it's on YouTube. It's a hidden third temple chambers discovered by Western Wall. And the red heifer, that was on September of last year. Will it be about 3 or 4 months before this dedication? So, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that the temple's already built. The one half, but the other half is, the finishing part of it. And what I believe ties into all of this as well is now there's talk that on June 4th of this year, there's going to be the two-nation peace treaty, which is, they're already speaking of having it ratified on June 4th, and then that'll lead us into September this fall, where I think we could see something very major happen.
Well, we'll have to wait and see because, it's not over yet. I mean, once the calm happens, there'll be another storm on the way. We know that for sure.
Absolutely. Just amazing times to be alive. And, one thing I wanted to say as well is in these times, men's hearts will fail them for fear of the things coming upon the earth. And, I think that's as evident as anything I've ever seen as right now.
I would agree. Thank you, John, for the call. I really appreciate it. Let's go now to Nick in Washington. Hi, Nick. You're on Ground Zero.
Hello, Clyde. Thanks for taking my call.
Bet.
So I had this dream about 2 weeks ago, and it's connecting with everything. It kind of really bothered me, hard to sleep. So in this dream, I was talking to what I thought was this woman, unusually attractive, but a little different. And then as I was talking, I said, "So what are you doing here?" And it or she said, "I'm experiencing the flesh." And as it said that, flames from these black eyes spiraled around, and it was really disturbing. And I realized I wasn't talking to a woman. I was talking to, I believe, Lucifer. And it slowly was following me, like, not like something that's going to murder you, but it was coming after me. And recently, the scripture about the armor of God has been sticking out to me. And so as it was following me, my family was like in the library and it was pacing and talking and saying all these things to me. So it was like I had a cloak and it was the Bible, and I wrapped it around my family and I started praying for protection. And it wasn't scary, and it kept coming. And then once the protection felt like it got there, I turned around and opened the cloak towards it with the word, and it didn't like it, and it went away. So the eye thing has been really bothering me for the last week or two. And I don't know if you've seen the things with the church and the iPet goat.
Yeah, I've seen that. The iPet goat, yes.
And when the Jesus figure is walking away and the flames around its eye, I was like, whoa, that, really connects with that. And then the black hole, the flames around that, I don't know, it's all seeming to connect. And it was really weird. And the figure was beautiful, but and it wasn't scary like a boogeyman. But you knew, I don't know, something wasn't right. But I just hope everybody, the armor of God, I believe, is a really important thing right now.
Well, thank you, Nick. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you for calling in. Bye-bye. That's it, isn't it? Yes, it is. Well, okay. So I want to thank you all for being part of the program tonight. We're going to be here tomorrow night with more and some great callers. Really appreciate it. Let's hope we're vigilant and we keep in mind that these are some very, very trying times. Some of them may be fulfilling a prophecy, and it's certainly a time to pay attention to these signs and wonders because we never know when that time might be the time. Good night, everybody.